Good morning, everyone. We're here again on another Wednesday. And we are, in this class, we are going to start the last unit, Aural Skills 3. So, several things I'll be doing today. Number one, I'm going to be returning your test 2, your training test 2. Number two, I'm going to be distributing the last assignment sheet for this class. After that, we're going to look at some rhythms out of the sightseeing book, which are not necessarily any more difficult than what we've been doing before, but they are new, so there's something I have to teach you about and how to perform these. And then after that, we're going to look at a few, maybe one melody, and then we're going to look at a melodic dictation so that we can, well, there's a new chord that's being arpeggiated in our melodies for melodic dictation this unit. So onwards and upwards always, got to make things just gradually a little more challenging. Excuse me, as we go forward until you finish Aural Skills 4. And you're getting there. You're getting there. You're certainly over halfway through your Aural Skills training here. So, all right, so with that said, let me start by saying, I was actually pretty pleased with the ear training test. The overall average in this class for the ear training test was an 86%, which is pretty good. I like that. I like to see that. I didn't break it down in terms of how many A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's there were. And I don't have the sightseeing test grades done yet either, because, in fact, 6 of you, half of you, are going to be singing for me this afternoon. And then 4 of you, I think, will be singing for me on Thursday. 2 of you have already sung for me. And when you get your ear training test back, I did put your sightseeing test grade underneath your name like I normally do, but just for 2 of you, because 2 of you have already sung for me. All right, so with that said, let me go ahead and return these. We'll look at these for a few minutes, see if you want to hear anything on this test again, and then I'll collect them back. So. She just walked out of the room?
She got locked out of her.
Oh, she got locked out of the room.
So she's on her way at some point. All right, so I would say if there was a troubled section on this test, I would say it was the last real music exam. That's probably where the most of the points were lost by the majority. Again, not all the students in this class, but that's where a lot of points were lost. Also, I was also on the first thing, the melodic dictation. There were several people that lost what I feel like is just a little too many points on melodic dictation. It was only a 4-measure melody, and so yeah, I'm just not sure where. Well, I mean, everyone, if you miss points on the melodic dictation, it kind of varied where you got off. I'd like to go ahead and play the melody, the melodic dictation, one more time. I believe if you missed something, I tried to put in the right notes for you. It was in the key of G minor. The first measure was an arpeggiation. I think everyone got the first measure.
So that's lay. It's just a regular E flat in the key signature. This is T, that's the first note in measure 3, so you need an F sharp. And that's a half note. Quarter, 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 F. It was just all stepwise after the T in measure 3. So the harmonic dictation turned out to be pretty good. I was happy to see. I didn't know for an ear training test which section is going to be the trickiest. For instance, if I really focus this last unit on melodic dictation and real music, it might be that in the final exam, it might be that the harmonic dictation or the rhythm dictation might be the one where the most points are lost. It's just hard to say. It varies. I did give extra credit for perfect authentic cadences in both of the harmonic dictations. And in many people's case, that offsets some of the points that they missed, the few points that they missed on the harmonic dictation. Some people actually just ended up losing just a teeny little bit in that whole section. Some people actually came out ahead on the positive side in that harmonic dictation section. Yeah, the rhythm, I think a lot of, let's see, was this the class where a lot of people got the melody? I think a lot of people got the melody. That tried for the melody on the rhythm, and they got extra credit for it, so that was good to see. Yeah, and then the real music examples. The first one, the Vivaldi example, was by far much better than the second one. Not many people missed much in the Vivaldi example, but in the Haydn example, yeah, I was getting all sorts of things. Let's see, would it take? I'm going to see if I can. If you just give me a minute, I'm going to see if I can connect and see if I can bring up the Haydn real music example so that we can hear it again. Should be on here. All I have to do is connect to the wireless display. Okay. Let's speed this up. I think it was track 13. That was probably going to be a little garbled. That's 141. Do you hear T? Sol, sol. Okay, so we had, in the bass we had do, fa, do, 141. And then we had T, T, do, sol, sol. I was getting some strange chords though. Let's hear that one more time. Let's try here. Here's T in the bass. Do, sol, sol. And by the way, I'll just mention this, although this isn't 100% true all the time. When a passage or a phrase does not end on 1, the likeliest chord that it would end on would be 5. If it's not 1, the likeliest chord would be 5 for a half cadence. And again, that's not true across the board, but I'd say that happens the majority of the time when the last chord of the phrase is not 1. Okay, when it's not 1. Yeah, very rarely do phrases end on just like a 4 chord or a 2 chord, something like that. Maybe a 6 chord once in a while for a deceptive cadence. But 5 is generally by far the most common after, if it's not 1. If it's not 1, so. All right, does anyone have any questions or comments or would like to hear anything again on this test before I come around and pick it back up? All right, then let me do that. Thank you, sir.
necessarily mean that all of this was right, it just means that I saw each one of those that was wrong, so I couldn't give credit, extra credit. Yeah.
So that's the same as taking.
Yeah, that would be choosier, although from what I remember, I think the alto was almost all correct. So yeah, really close.
Oh, so you only apply it with all the intervals like that?
Well, for instance, if you try for an inner voice on harmonic dictation, let's say you attempt to dictate the alto. Every single note in the alto would have to be correct to get extra credit. If you miss one alto note, you wouldn't get extra credit. But you wouldn't lose any points either.
Okay.
Yeah. That's right.
I'll just follow it. Yeah.
And that's a lot of times that's what it is. A lot of times that's what it is. All right, so the next thing I need to do is I need to give you your last assignment sheet for this semester. I can't believe we're at that point already, but we are. So this sheet is just front side, nothing on the back. It'll take us up to the final exam. And we'll need to talk about the final exam just for a moment. So this is, in this class, this is all that's left this semester. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Including today's class, there are just 9 more classes. So after today, starting next week, we just have 8 more classes before the final exam. Let's just quickly scan down to the bottom, the final exam. You may know that final exams are scheduled on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of Thanksgiving week, because we're finishing early this semester. It turns out, I looked at the final exam schedule, and you can too to verify, but it turns out that our final exam for this class is scheduled Wednesday the 25th from 3:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. Now I know that that is the last day of exams. It's also probably the last part of the day also. But this is when the exam is scheduled, so I don't want this to sound crass, but I don't want to hear any excuses about how, oh, my family's going on a trip, or I have to leave early, or I have to go home early, because I don't really care about that. This is when the exam is scheduled, and this is when you're going to be here if you're going to take it. Okay? All right. So, other than that, we are going to deal with, in melodic dictation, we're going to deal with the supertonic chord. We also are going to deal with the supertonic chord in real music and harmonic dictation. By the way, the supertonic chord is the 2 chord. That's a very important predominant chord. So it's one that we need to be listening for, not only in melodies, but also in harmonic progressions. And then in sight singing, we are going to be dealing with melodies that outline the dominant triad now, leaps between tones of the dominant triad. And in rhythms, we're going to be getting to subdivisions in compound meter. Okay, so with that said, we're not going to get to obviously all of that today, but we are going to talk about rhythms and melodies in your sight singing book, and I'm going to try to get to a melodic dictation before the end of class today. So just hang on to these sheets, and if there are any changes, I will let you know ahead of time to guide us into the end of the semester. All right, so if you would please open up your sight singing book to page 163. By the way, I don't mean to sound, I don't mean to sound mean when I say things about the final exam. It's just that I've had just so many students have excuses and reasons for this and that not coming to class. And after you just hear it enough times, it just kind of bounces off of you like, whatever, I don't care anymore. But I mean, so yeah, that's just kind of how it's been going so far this semester. Okay, on page 163 in your sight singing book, we are going to be dealing with some rhythms we're going back to compound meter, which is tapping 3 times per beat, because there are 3 divisions per beat in compound meter. But this time, instead of just regularly doing the 1 lolly, 2 lolly, we're further dividing the division into what I call subdivision. So over here on the board, I have the beat in, let's say we're in 6/8 meter. 6/8 meter, and the beat would be a dotted quarter. And when we first started compound meter, whatever semester that was, way back when, we had notes at the beat level, and we would just basically say 1, 2, or whatever the beat was. And we had note values that were longer than the beat as well. And then quickly after that in compound meter, maybe almost immediately when we started compound meter, we were dealing with the division of the beat. So we had 3 divisions, 1 lolly, 2 lolly. Okay, and we're used to saying that in different combinations of those divisions. But now we're getting to the point where even the divisions are further divided. And so I call this level, and the book calls it, and I think correctly too, it calls it the subdivision level. So we got the subdivision level, the division level, and the beat level. And the question becomes, well, what are we going to say? Because we always need to speak something when we perform a rhythm. What are we going to say for all of these notes when we have notes at the subdivision level in compound meter? Well, the nice thing is that a lot of this information from the division level still trickles down. So for instance, we're still going to say la and li right there. And we're still going to say la and li right here. Now what do we say on all the notes in between? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to say the word ta for every single note in between the la's and the li's. Okay. So, basically what we're going to be saying, if we have a rhythm like this in a 6/8 measure, we're going to say 1 ta la ta li ta, 2 ta la ta li ta. So we're still saying, as you can see that I showed the trickle down, we're still saying the beat, we're still saying the la li at the divisions, but in between now we're just saying ta, and that's all it comes down to be. And if you talk with any student that has already finished or been through Aural Skills 3 and 4 and already completed that, they'll say, oh yeah, we did the 1 ta la, 2 ta la, 3 ta la, 4 ta la, or whatever the rhythm or the meter may be. Okay? So, let's go ahead and see, how are we going to do this? What I'd like us to do is I would like us to read through and perform each line of the top left diagram on page 163. We'll just treat each line as kind of like a measure in 6/8, and we'll just go through each line without stopping. That way we'll go all the way down the diagram. All right, and so I think you'll get an idea of how to say what we're supposed to say. So for instance, in line 4 of the diagram, we would say 1 la ta li ta, 2 la ta li ta. And in line 6 of the diagram, we would say 1 la li ta, 2 la li ta. Do you see that? How that works? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and all read through all 11 lines in order, that top left diagram. All right, go at a tempo such as this. 1 la li, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 1 la li, 2 la li, 1 ta la ta li ta, 2 ta la ta li ta, 1 la ta li ta, 2 la ta li, 1 ta la ta li, 2 ta la ta li, 1 la li ta, 2 la li ta, 1 la ta li, 2 la ta li, 1 ta la li, 2 ta la li, 1 li ta, 2 li ta, 1 ta li, 2 ta li, 1 ta li ta, 2 ta li ta. Okay, you see how, I know we went pretty fast with that, but do you see how we got all those syllables? It just depends exactly where they fall within the subdivision area of the beat. Okay. All right, now, I am going to perform in that same diagram, same top left diagram, I'm gonna perform 3 out of those 11 lines in a random order. And I can perform it once, twice, 3 times, as many times as you need to hear it. But I would like you, after listening, I'd like you to tell me the order number of the lines that I just performed. Okay? So I'm gonna just pick 3 random lines in any random order. I want you to listen and see if you can tell which 3 lines I performed and in what order. Okay, so here's my tempo. 1 liter, 2 liter, 1 liter, liter, 2 liter, liter, 1 liter, li, 2 liter, li. Anyone got it, or should I do it again? Do it again? Okay. Make sure I do it in the same order this time. Here we go. 1 liter, 2 liter, 1 liter, liter, 2 liter, liter, 1 liter, li, 2 liter, li. You got it?
1, 4, 7.
Not quite 1, 4, 7.
Or no, sorry, 9, 4, 7.
Yes, 9, 4, 7. That's exactly right. Very good. Let's do one more of these. Just another 3 different lines now, so you can eliminate 4, 7, and 9. 3 different lines in just a random order. Okay. Here we go. How about 1 to lata li, 2 to lata li, 1 to lita, 2 to lita, 1 to la li, 2 to la li. Sounds like gibberish in Greek to you, right? Okay, let me do it one more time. Same 3 lines again in the same random order. 1 to lata li, 2 to lata li, 1 to lita, 2 to lita, 1 to la li, 2 to la li.
5, 7, 8.
Not 5, 7, 8.
5, 11,
5, 11, 8. That's right. 5, 11, 8. Very good. Okay. All right. So that you get a little more practice with this, let's turn the page to page 164, and let's read through one of the rhythms that's assigned for next class. Keep an eye on the time here. How about rhythm 1037? 1037 is one that's assigned for next class. If I look for it. Yes. That's on your new assignment sheet. So, 1037 is in 12/8. We should remember, you guys are veterans at this now. My freshmen, they still need a lot of help and reminder with this, but 12/8 means we conduct in 4. Right? And we tap 3 times for each beat. So we're using the 4 pattern. Can we do our best to just read through 1037, and then you can practice it more precisely on your own time between now and next Monday. So how about a tempo of, for 1037, 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lolly, 4. 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lata lita, 4. 1 lolly, lolly, lata lita, 4 li, 1 lata lita, 2 lolly, 3 to lata lita, 4 li, 1 lata lita, 2 li, 3. All right. If this causes the conducting or the tapping, if it causes you to lose a little coordination, please practice this so that you can get it back in sync and back in coordination. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about how to perform these or what to say? Yes?
When we're in the head better of 4, when we say 3, can we say T possibly?
T is fine. I accept T. Right. So, because I don't think we say any other T, do we? We say la, ta, li, ta, but we don't exactly say T. So I've been accepting that for years. Yeah, that's fine. In fact, I don't know, does Dr. Armstrong promote T? or some schools promote that, I understand that. So yeah, that's fine. In fact, sometimes when, like if we have, let's say we had a rhythm that looked like this. Let me change this. Let's do this. And say the beat 2 in 6/8 meter was a quarter plus 2/16. Basically, we're saying 2 liter. Isn't that like going to the grocery store and buying some soda? A 2 liter of soda? I mean, I always point that out every year, but you can have 1 liter of soda, you can have 2 liter of soda. Okay, maybe that's really bad. Sorry about that. Anyways, we'll get some rhythms like that. Can we turn back in your books now to page 85? By the way, I don't know how many of you are in, like, say, the wind ensemble, but I'm sure you have rhythms like this all the time, and even rhythms more difficult than this. So we're getting there. We're getting there. On page 85, you'll see that we're starting chapter 6 in your sightseeing book in terms of melodies. Believe it or not, we've gone through chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 we just finished with minor melodies. Chapter 6 includes major melodies and minor melodies, a mixture, combination. But the main focus again is that there are leaps in these melodies between tones of the dominant chord. So as the author shows on that page, let's say we're in the key of G major. And we know that our dominant chord is Sol, Ti, and Re. Those are the pitches. Actually, I probably wouldn't even need that accent. Well, that's good enough. And then if we put them out this way, we have Sol, Ti, and Re. And whereas Sol is often a very strong anchor pitch, sometimes Ti and Re get to be, I don't want to say they're not fudged or overlooked, but they fall between the cracks, so to speak, of Do, Mi, and Sol. Okay, so you can see some diagrams there on page 85 in the G major or the G minor key. By the way, we know the dominant chord is Sol, Ti, Re in both major and minor. It's still the capital 5. Yeah. We don't ever sing Sol, Te, Re. We don't ever sing a minor 5 chord. All right, so this is what it boils down to. On the bottom of page 85, notice that it says, number 1, if we leap to the third of a dominant chord, the third of the triad, this right here, that's a leap to T. Okay? And that hopefully will soon become easy because no matter how large the leap, the target note, T, is always a half step below Do. So if you know and are certain and sure where Do is, then you can think of Do and then just scoop right underneath it. And you go down to T. And if you're leaping from wherever above or from wherever below to T, it's just a half step below Do. So if you think of it that way, hopefully leaps to T won't be that difficult. Turning the page to page 86, if we leap to the root of the triad, well, that's a leap to Sol. That shouldn't be super difficult either because, well, we've been having leaps to Sol already with the leap to Sol in terms of the triad context. Okay? So we've done this before. We've had leaps to Sol before. Finally, number 3 on the top of page 86. What happens when you leap to the 5th of a dominant triad? Root, 3rd, and 5th. It's the same thing as leaping to Re. Think of it as just leaping to the scale degree 1 step above Do. 1 step above time. Okay. So, in summary, it says in the middle of page 86, any leap within the dominant triad will either be to the dominant tone, Sol, or it will be to a scale degree just 1 step away from Do. That's it. Either to the dominant pitch Sol or to the scale degree 1 step away from Do. Right? If I could draw Do in the middle. It's not part of a 5 chord, but you can see how close. You can see how closely related, close T and Re are to Do in terms of their proximity. Okay, so
There are some suggestions by the author on page 86 as to how to prepare for these melodies. I would say that you don't need to prepare for them much differently than any other melody you do sight singing for. But what I would do is I would scan the melodies now in chapter 6, scan them for intervals or leaps between tones of the dominant triad, between tones of the 5 chord. So let's see, for instance, can you look at the practice melody in the middle of page 86? That one is in G major. You see how there are leaps between tones of the 5 chord that are bracketed A, B, and C? Because in the key of G major, the 5 chord is the F sharp and A, so great. So, let's do it from the there's a G. It's a little high, but for instance, if I sang that practice melody there in the middle of the page, starts on beat 4. Mi, fa, sol, re, mi, do, si, re, sol, sol, mi, fa, sol, si, do. You see how you can hear where you need to leap? If you know where do is, then you can find re, or you could find T right below. Can we all sing through that practice melody right there in the middle of page 86? Do, mi, there's a pitch mi. And we'll start in on, use conducting for this, just for agreement here, and we'll start on beat 4. Okay, 1, 2, go. Mi, fa, sol, re, mi, do, si, re, sol, sol, mi, fa, sol, si, do. So that's a pretty big leap. That's a 6. But again, if you think about it, where is my destination note? It's just a half step below time. It doesn't make it seem so, it's not so bad, really. I hope you can think of it that way and see it that way. I find, sometimes I find it very hard, like that first leap in that melody, to go from sol, re. I find that leap to be tricky. We don't normally sing that interval of a fourth. We were used to sing sol, do, but sol, re. That's going to be a new one, I think, for a lot of us. All right, so one last thing I want to do before we move on. Can we look at melody, let's see, 6.3. Go to page 87. Look at melody 6.3. Who can tell me the key of that melody, first of all?
F major.
Yeah, F major, very good. Now, I'm going to, just to save a little time, in the last line, the third line of 6.3, there is a measure that outlines or arpeggiates the 5 chord. Think about what notes are part of the 5 chord in F major, and can you find the measure that outlines the notes of the dominant triad? Okay, measure 2 of the last line, right? Do you see the G half note, then E quarter and C quarter going down? If you want to mark or circle that measure like I did and just put a big capital 5, I'm fine with that, because then you know that you need to sing re, ti, and sol. I think it's fine to mark things like this rather than, put solfege, write all the solfege syllables in your book. I don't care for that. But I think if you're looking at this from a harmonic context and what the focus is on for the unit, I'm fine if you mark that in your book, because then you're thinking the way you should be thinking. All right, so I think we're going to try F major. We're going to sing the scale, and then we're going to read through that melody. Now, apologies to a lot of you who haven't done your sight singing test yet. Your sight singing test is in minor, but for right now, we're just going to do a major scale, and we're going to do a major melody. Okay? I'm going to sing low. Let's do an F major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la. Good. Let's ignore the repeat at the end of the first line. We'll just blow right through it, bypass it. Okay, so no repeat. So, do, this is conducting. Let's do your best sight reading. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. So, do, re, mi, re, re, do, si, so, la, ti, do, do, si, do. Mi, fa, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re. Re, mi, do, re, si, sol, la, ti, do, si, do. Now, and within the context, after you've sung all these notes in F major, re, ti, sol, not so bad, hopefully. And that's that one measure there in the last one. Okay, comments, questions? Thank you. Let's move right along then to a couple words about our melodic dictations this unit. As I had mentioned previously, in the ear training book and in the chapter that we're going to get our melodies out of, the melodies now may outline or arpeggiate the supertonic chord. That is the 2 triad. And we all know, for instance, that, well, I guess I could keep G major, the key in play here. We all know that in the supertonic triad in major, the 2 chord is A minor. And in minor keys, so for instance, G minor, the supertonic triad is diminished. Maybe we haven't thought about the solfege syllables for each distinct or individual note of these chords, but the 2 chord in major keys would be the pitches re, fa, and la. Now these pitches definitely are what I call in the cracks. They're between the do, mi, and sol. So we don't sing these, we don't focus on these pitches all that much. But these are the tones that create the 2 chord in major keys. Now in minor keys, which we won't really deal with, at least today, because we're running a little short on time, the pitches are going to be re, fa, and le. Re, fa, le. To make that a diminished chord. Okay. We know from written theory that the 2 chord, as in predominant, 95.999% of the time goes to what chord? If this is predominant, 2s like to go to, don't think too hard.
Top
5, that's right. Okay, so 96.8742% of the time, 2 chords like to go to 5. Sometimes they can go to this first. Big whoop, right? But when you're listening to a melody that's being arpeggiated, and when we get to harmonic dictations, if you hear a 2 chord being outlined in the melody or being played in a harmonic dictation, I want you to be thinking, is the next chord, is the next note that I'm hearing, is that part of a 5 chord? Because that's what you should logically expect, and it makes sense, it's common sense. Okay? All right, now, besides outlining 2 chords, our melodies are still going to perhaps outline the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords occasionally, as they did last unit. But how does the 2 chord, especially this one right here, how does it stick out among the other harmonies that we've been dealing with, like 1, 4, and 5 specifically? Aren't the 1, 4, and 5 chords all major triads? But in major keys, I think this is going to be now our first minor chord. So hopefully it'll stick out in that sense that you'll hear, oh, if I hear a minor triad being outlined,
Or if I hear a minor harmony in a harmonic dictation, chances are it's going to be that. All right. Blah, blah, blah. Let's skip some. Okay. Let's vocally arpeggiate this progression first, and then we'll spend some time doing a short melody in your book. How about in the key of D major? And I'll get us D major. Let's vocally arpeggiate this progression. And so that way we'll get practice arpeggiating re, fa, la, re, fa, la. And so we have D, then we have 2, then we have 5, 7. How about this? Since we haven't done this yet, let me arpeggiate the chord by myself first, and you guys follow suit right after that, okay? Okay, I'll do it first, ready? Do, mi, sol, mi, do. Go ahead. Do, mi, sol, mi, do. I'll do this one. Re, fa, la, fa, re. Re, fa, la, fa, re. That feels funny, doesn't it? Sol, ti, re, fa, re, ti, sol. Sol, ti, re, fa, re, ti, sol. Okay, everyone together on this one. Now, ready? Do, mi, sol, mi, do. Yeah, did that feel a little funny? Re, fa, la, fa, re. Good job, throat. I've never sung that before. You know, I don't know which one. All right, so we're going to get used to that sound. On page 149, I'd like to look at number 1, that melody. Page 149, number 1. And we're in the treble? No, we're in the bass clef. Right there. We're in D major, or why would I have it in D major? Not sure, did they give you just the first note? Page 149, number 1. This is one of those days where I kind of wish we just had 5 more minutes than we do, but we only have about 5 minutes left, so. Maybe I'll be able to play it 2, 3 times max. Notice that it starts on me, the bass clef. I have a hint to tell you about this melody. The melody contains 1 chord outlined in each measure. So every measure is a different chord being arpeggiated, and there are no 9 chord tones at all. So all this whole melody is just skips between chord tones. Okay, let's listen to it. 1, 2, 3, 4. slightly new material, but this melody is about as straightforward and direct as it gets. There's the first bit, me. Let's hear it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. This will have to be the final here. For the sake of time. Starts on E. 1, 2, 3, 4. The arpeggiations of this melody, to me, are so square and so straightforward. We could actually put a Roman numeral underneath each measure to describe what chord is being outlined in that measure. And it turned out to be just a beautiful, well-formed basic chord. Okay, so mi, sol, la. There's an arpeggiation of the one chord. Now, I hope you heard the minor arpeggiation. Ya, 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 which is la, fa, re. And you know from theory, you know what notes those are. The notes of a 2-chord in this key are E, G, B. So that means if you're coming down, it's going to be B, G, E. La, fa, re. And then there were 4 quarter notes in this bar. And they all outline descending in a descending fashion. They outline the 5, 7. Fa, re, ti, sol, right? So just think about what those notes are in this key. Use your theory knowledge, and you're pretty much home free. Okay. Now again, I apologize that it's that quick, but I just kind of wanted to get through. Wanted to show you that it doesn't have to be too difficult if you know what you're listening for. So in the next batch of melodies that I'm having you dictate for homework, I don't know if it'll be this straightforward, but listen for leaps between tones, the tones la, fa, and re, la, things like that, that bring out the supertonized triad of the 2-chord. Okay? Chills for some reason. Maybe because it's just beautiful music. Anyways, that's all the time we have today, so let's take a break, and most of you I'll see you in the next hour.